Hello and welcome to the Granger Podcast. I am your host, Kirk Bjorland, City Administrator. On this podcast, we'll provide current updates on businesses, schools, public interest projects, and more.
You got to create a community where people want to live. And then that helps in the recruitment and retention of the viable workforce. So that's why the developing community and the corporate community, they actually love us and what we do, because we create communities where people want to live. Right now, we are just a little short of 1 million visitors a year to Jester Park, which, by the way, with the 141 construction has been a lot of fun to get those 1 million people out there.
Welcome back to the Granger Podcast. I'm Kirk Bjorland, the host. With me today is Rich Leopold with Polk County Conservation. Rich,
right.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Kirk.
I thought it'd be fun with all the things happening up in our region and around the Granger area and Jester Park and the Brenton Slough. It'd be great to have you on, talk about Polk County Conservation, talk about the Brenton Slough, talk about your organization, Jester Park.
Yeah.
Exciting things happening south of us. You want to kind of talk about the Brenton Slough?
There are. Yeah. No, and thanks for having me too. Any opportunity we have to talk about some of what we do that, right? So, Polk County Conservation and a lot of your people will know that we do three main things. We do outdoor recreation, environmental education, and preservation of natural heritage. So with outdoor recreation, most of what we do is nature-y stuff. So we do hiking, biking, wildlife viewing, paddling, fishing, hunting, camping, picnicking. That's our game. Yeah. We don't do swimming pools, dog parks, pickleball courts, right? Yeah. That's City Park and Rec that does that. So that's kind of our operating space. Environmental education. So we have a number of full-time naturalists, and they work in the schools doing different nature programming or public programming. We have something called OWLs, Older, Wiser, Livelier Seniors, all the way down to preschool, church groups, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, all those kind of things. And then we do tens of thousands of contacts a year with our environmental education staff. And then preservation of natural heritage. So we're the primary agency that does a lot with wetland restorations, prairie restorations, timber stand improvement, those types of things. We actually own or manage a little over 17,000 acres in and around Polk County. So a lot of our major parks like Jester Park, right next to us. Our address actually at Jester Park is Granger. So there you go. Chautauqua, Bottom Greenbelt, and the northeast corner of the county. Easter Lake, Thomas Mitchell, Yellow Banks. Polk County Conservation is unique in that most areas in Iowa, you have your cities that has a park and rec, and then you have your county parks around it. Right. Well, in Polk County, of course, the city has grown around most of our parks, or we've established footprints right in the middle of the city. So we also have Two Rivers Park, the Lauridsen Skate Park, and some of the new icon sites in downtown Des Moines will be ours too.
Right. Exciting. No. And you bring up a good point. What's exciting for the Granger area is to our south is the Brenton Slough.
Yes.
1,100 acres?
1,100 acres. That's been a wonderful acquisition. It's probably one of the larger acquisitions we've ever had at one time. And so, we had been working with the Brenton family for a couple of years. There's different ownership patterns and they're scattered out. And of course, the Brenton family has had a tremendous impact for a long time on the Polk County metro area. Yeah. So working with the Brentons and what they did with that slough. So, it was originally they had very large cattle feedlots south of town here, and they had worked with Iowa State University and had created a number of wetlands that were catching the runoff from those feedlots and treating that runoff before it ran into Beaver Creek. And then, of course, they were avid duck hunters. And so the Ingersoll Duck Club, it was called way back in the day, it built a cabin out there. And every fall, they'd all get out there and smoke cigars and do other things and shoot ducks, right? Yep. So they created the slough next to Brenton Slough. So we were thrilled when they called and wanted to start talking with us. It actually took about 2 years of negotiations to get the land deal done.
Good.
Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation was key there.
Yeah.
They're much more nimble than a government organization like myself, so they stepped in, and we've been working on the acquisition pattern now, and we should own the whole thing by March or April of this year, Polk County Conservation.
And that's exciting for the region and for the Granger area with Jester Park to the north and then the Brenton Slough to the south. We're excited to, as we grow and the metro is approaching coming to Granger. And we feel a little bit, you mentioned that, the metro has grown around your parks. We know that the metro's coming. You can see that all along all along in the metro, but specifically on the south and on the southwest side, coming up from Van Meter and West Des Moines and marching up through Urbandale and Clive and Grimes and heading towards Granger. So we're working to put plans together to how do we embrace that? How do we strategically grow? How do we partner with the county and those around us? But the exciting thing for me is when I learned about the Brenton Slough, we have some commonality where, we could look at, you're talking about trails and how do you get from the slough through Granger up to Jester Park, and how do we capitalize on that? You mentioned about some of the duck hunting. So we, in the last several years, have been working with a local farmer, Harold Lamberts, who within the last year or so sold his farm and looking at doing an executive development, but in that area. But the exciting part is they have partnered and they're doing some wetland mitigation. Harold had a rather large duck pond and had done quite a bit of conservation himself.
Right.
And the exciting thing is the developers are in there and they've expanded that. And I think there is some commonality there with Polk County Conservation, but that whole area is exciting for us. We're excited to bring in that housing development. And how do we capitalize and partner with the Brenton Slough and Polk County on that south side? We have some large open areas that we're working with landowners. But it's an exciting time and an exciting time to see, all the progress and the things you're going to do with the slough.
Yeah, no, that Lambert property, and perhaps you know this, Kirk, that's coming to us eventually, the mitigation bank. So they established with the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation and us a mitigation bank. Once those credits are sold and the mitigation bank is established, it'll become part of Brenton Slough proper. Yeah, so we'll be managing that for infinity. Yeah, when we were looking at this, the Brenton Slough area, and as I mentioned, it's nature for nature's sake. So we were thinking about the unique flora and fauna that are there. There's nesting sandhill cranes. There's species of concerned turtles that live in there and different things like that. It's an ecosystem you just can't duplicate. And then when we looked at its physical location on the land, and you're right, the metro is growing. Yep. And so one of the things that metros have been increasingly turning to is what kind of amenities do we have to offer? If we're going to recruit and retain an active people base for jobs and security and everything else, how do you attract those people? Greenways are a great way to do that. Right. Yep. So our trail systems and our greenways are many times acting as the defining lines. Yep. So now this will be the defining line between Grimes, Granger, and Johnston. Yep. So we're excited to be in that space right now.
Yeah. So what steps are? I know our side of the north side of the Brenton Slough, the team that's doing that development have been in and they're updating and cleaning out the wetlands. And I think they're doing their due diligence to get that ready. What does what does the south side look like and what's the timing look like for the project?
Yeah, and it's been a process because of acquisition. So we phased it out 3 years of buying the property from Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation, and then of course you apply for all the grants, you do the private fundraising and everything else. We've done really well, and we will be done by late this spring. So what was supposed to take 3 years is going to take less than 2.5. Great. Now that aligns with then what are you going to do with it? So we've had a lot of the public already that how do we get out there? How are we going to use it? So we're going to be phasing that also. So We're going to have a number of soft trails and picnic areas and things like that. So it's going to be a pretty light footprint on a whole. But there will be one of the major things that you've alluded to is we're looking at recreational trails, right? And one of the things we do in Polk County Conservation is a lot of cities have great trails, and we support that effort 1,000%. But they need interconnection in between the cities or regional planning. Right. So Grimes has its trails, Granger's developing, whatever it is. And then how do we connect Johnston, Jester Park, Grimes, and Granger all into one common trail system? We've done it with Bondurant. We're doing it with Polk City. We've done the Great Western Trail on some of the southwestern suburbs down there. So that's what we're doing right now is looking at those possibilities.
Yeah, and that's exciting for us. One of the, and I'll take this opportunity that when those developers watch this segment, here is an amenity that we will be partnering, in the area, partnering with Polk County Conservation, partnering with Grimes, partnering with Johnston. How do you make that trail system? Now, we're not talking a 2 or 3 year plan. We're talking a long-term plan, but what's that trail system and those amenities look like?
Yeah.
And we're working diligently in Granger. How do you embrace that? What's that south side of 141 look like? We have a lot of opportunity with land down there, and we have a lot of landowners that are looking at what will the future be. And it's an exciting time.
It is.
I can envision a time where you can get on a trailhead somewhere in the metro, whether that's Johnston or Grimes. For that matter, it could be Waukee or Urbandale, and you make your way north, and you can make your way up through Johnston, through Grimes, through Granger, get up to Jester Park, through the Brenton Slough. We have a little bit of hurdle, long range. How are we going to get over 141 or under? Probably over is probably the way, but we'll be pursuing grant funds and other opportunities to look at that. But I just want the listener to know that kind of the long-term plan is how do we work together and put that type of entity together for the Granger area, some of the exciting things that, is this possible and are we growing? Well, if you look at some of the recent things that are occurring, from new junior high being built that's looking to transition into a high school. Fairway just opened up the middle of December. We're running new infrastructure, running new water towers. We recently approved platting for the 47 unit executive development. We have other developing going on in the community. The community is looking at a new public safety city hall building. And so as we strategically grow, I want to make sure that we're at the table with Polk County Conservation and others. And you may talk a little bit about, we sit on a group together looking at this project, but what might be some of those next steps or your vision for that area that then we, in that part of the area in the region can look to how do we then join that and capitalize on the activities?
Yeah, and it's exciting. I still hold that the hardest part of any project is deciding to do it.
Correct.
Right? Once you make that decision, providence starts to happen. Things start to fall into place, and it might take longer or be more expensive or whatever it is, but providence starts to move in that direction. So with this conversation with Grimes, Granger, Jester Park, this has happened before. I was in meetings 10 years ago with the National Park Service where we were going to do this trail system, and it just kind of fizzled. There was no real institutional ownership that said this is going to happen. Well, this time around, there is. As you know, Kirk, you've been a great advocate and participant here from Granger. And when we started our planning effort, since it was large, and it's not just Polk County, it's Dallas County too. Correct. So early on, I had talked to Dallas County Conservation about their interest, because about a third of our Brenton Slough is going to be in Dallas County, about their interest, and they had their hands full. They were doing a major trail upgrades and stuff like that. So they said, you go for it. So we are actually going to own property in Dallas County. But what that meant for planning then is you need Dallas County too. Yeah. So as you know, we now have Dallas County, Polk County Conservation, Grimes, Granger, and Johnston. You need a larger planning entity. So we petitioned the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which largely focuses on transportation, but they also focus on trail systems and things like that. So we have now been, as you know, attending those meetings, and we're coming together with a RFP, a request for proposal, for a firm to really start formalizing what this looks like. And of course, our vested interest at Polk County Conservation is the recreational trail system and things like trailheads, parking areas, public safety, those types of things. Grimes and Granger and Johnston have their own municipal and parochial interest, and they might be served out too. And we know there's some big impediments, the things like 141, how are you going to get across that safely? But I truly, truly believe that Providence is now moving. And so now it's going to happen. We just haven't got all the answers yet as to how it's going to happen.
And with our, one of my main objectives is and challenges and duties with a city is how do you do economic development and do it strategically? Well, this is one of the soft benefits of the recreation and the trails that softens that economic development, that gives a why to why should I come to Granger? What are the benefits and the features? And, we're not just building brick and mortar. We're looking at recreation. We're looking at trails. You talked about, the Brenton Slough will kind of have a soft presence and not a lot of concrete and not a lot of development, of keep it more natural and nature. And that's important for a community.
It very much is. Yeah. And, I've worked a lot with community leaders like yourself and corporate leaders and things like that. And times have changed. Back when I got my first degree, it was you found a job and you moved there. That's not the way it works anymore. People move where they want to live, and then they find a job. So that means you have to create a community, whether it be, public education, healthcare, recreational opportunities and things like that. You got to create a community where people want to live. And then that helps in the recruitment and retention of the viable workforce. So that's why the developing community and the corporate community, they actually love us and what we do, because we create communities where people want to live. Last year, Polk County Conservation counted 3.8 million visits to our parks and trails.
Wow.
So it's an astounding number. People want this and they're willing to pay for it. So
with that, so a couple things. What's the count heading to Jester? And then what do you, I know it's early, but what would you estimate with the amenities that you would have at the Brenton project? What would you estimate those numbers to be?
It'll be interesting. So we keep growing, and when we talk Jester Park too, you're talking a complex, right? So it's what we call our playground. We have the Jester Park Nature Center, we have the Outdoor Rec and Wellness Center, we have cabins, we have 5 campgrounds, we have the Jester Park Lodge where they host a lot of weddings and family events. The golf course is there, and the equestrian center. So we got, and that's just not even everything that's out there. Right now, we are just a little short of 1 million visitors a year to Jester Park, which, by the way, with the 141 construction has been a lot of fun to get those 1 million people out there.
I know you're paid.
I know you do. So in the future, though, what growth potentials does this trail have? It'll be interesting to see. So a lot of our trails, we're seeing anywhere between 100 and 300,000 visits a year. So if this trail is likewise, and especially if we can make it circuitous, right? Because people, they'll do a destination when they ride out somewhere, have a picnic, ride back. But people like riding in a circle in a circuitous manner. So if we can figure out, how to get this through to Jester too and their trail system and over to Grimes, Granger, what a wonderful loop.
And that's what's exciting for me is how, those 1 million visitors, how do we tie, and I know we've been having conversations about this, but how do you tie that 1 million visitors a year? Now, not all of them are going to be on a bike or going to walk, but how do you tie those 1 million visitors a year to a 10-foot trail to Granger so that we have that connectivity? The exciting thing is we have some recent annexation that'll be coming into play that will be Granger. we've talked about a method to get there. I'm still working on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you talk about quality of life and amenities and you go to answer why Granger, Jester Park's a big part of that. Why
Sure.
Granger, the opportunities, probably Johnston and Granger are the two that are the most closely connected. And what an opportunity for our communities and
Yeah.
what benefits. I look at that and say, wow, that's a great amenity that we don't have to pay for.
Sure.
We pay for it in our taxes, but the city isn't operating and running,
Yeah.
a 1,600 acre nature park and what a benefit. So for the listeners, why the trail? Why are we looking to, is Granger looking to connect to Jester Park and the Brenton Slough? It's the quality of life. It's, to help answer the why Granger. Why would you move here? Why would my kids go to school here? Why would we build a home here or live here? It's that connectivity. It's the nature trails. It's the how do we get a trail system from Granger up to Jester Park down to the Brenton Slough? And as we grow, I often get a little bit of pressure to say, well, we don't want to grow. Granger doesn't want to grow that fast. My answer typically is we don't own the land. We know how urban sprawl occurs. We are doing things, and Brenton Slough and Jester Park are a great example of how do you preserve those areas.
Sure.
Now, the Brenton Slough is a natural buffer that occurs between us and Grimes, us and Johnston in the area. So we have what an asset. And then you look north, and we've got a 1,600 acre Jester Park.
Yep.
What a benefit.
I agree. And, there's going to be direct financial benefit too. And as far as growing fast or growing slow, that's a hard question. And I'm an ecologist, so it's out of my expertise. But if you are growing fast or growing slow, grow smart. Think about these amenities, because you have a lot of communities that where there's already a lot of development exist, and then they try to put this footprint over the top of it. Yeah. It's very difficult to do. Yeah. If you have 20 driveways a block, it's hard to make a recreational trail, right? Yeah. So you got to think about access points and trailheads and business opportunities. So when you look at where trails have been popular here in central Iowa, look at Madrid, look at Bondurant, look at Ankeny. Yeah. Their trails are major assets, and they have hotels and businesses, bike shops, brew pubs, all these kind of things that are doing very well along these trail systems.
Yeah, I've gotten introduced to some of them. The difficulty in my house, though, is when we talk about going for a ride, they turn into 40, 50-mile rides. I enjoy my bike. I don't know that I enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't know that I enjoy, but the trail systems provide that.
Absolutely.
You hop on the trail, and often we head out from Waukee, and you can head a lot of ways, whether you're heading west or you're heading northwest, and we often end up in Madrid and Inburn and Adel, and just a great opportunity. So you brought up a good point. Why are we looking at, why would I be leading an effort in Granger to locate those trails? The time to do the planning is now. Because you are correct. Once there is development occurring or businesses going in, it gets really difficult. So one of the things we feel really good about in Granger is we do have that strategic plan. We do have a land use plan in place, and we're trying to overlay what do we see the vision. And part of this podcast is to kind of uncover some of that too, and get the information out to the public, that we have a great opportunity with the Brenton Slough and with Jester Park, and how might we capitalize on connecting that. And I think that connectivity can be, answer the why Granger. It can, what can my family do on weekends and on evenings and going for walks.
Oh, yes.
And then economic development. There are businesses that thrive along the trail systems, and how do we capitalize on that and strategically partner?
Yeah, you hit on another point, that trail systems, and that's accessibility. Yeah. So we do a lot with universal design and thinking about different user groups. So when you create a trail system, it's for everybody. So you have people that are, elderly or mobility impaired, but they can use electric bikes or get out and do a little bird stroll in the evening or whatever it is.
Yep.
You have those hardcore bikers that are going 40, 50 miles and commuting. You have kids that'll get together and use these trails.
Yep.
So, we think a lot about accessibility and the different user groups, and trails in any community have increased property values and interest, and there's just been excitement around them.
Right.
One of my favorite stories is I had a gentleman once I was working with, an old farmer, good friend, and he was not real excited about a trail going through his cornfield. And so we talked, and we finally came to a place where, okay, it's going to happen. We're going to buy this land and we're going to create this trail. And then when we were signing the acquisition papers, he said, so how long is it going to take you to build this trail? And I said, I don't know. It's going to, 2 or 3 years. And he's like, well, my wife now has a medical condition and she's very excited about riding this trail. So let's get this built quickly. It's like, dude, if you had told me this a year ago, right?
Right.
So we just know that it just enhances the quality of life for all the different user groups in an area.
Right. And let's talk about that. So, and your trail systems aren't disruptive. And I want to bring that up because as we're finding that path of, what's that connectivity look like for us, both south and heading to the northeast. Talk a little bit about the design, what the right-of-way looks like,
Sure.
what ownership might look like. How would, as communities are expanding and we have a lot of opportunity, when you look at our design, we will have the community of Granger for the listeners. We will be connected with a trail system from our downtown, from Fairway, by the elementary school, up to the library and community center, and then up to the new junior high that will be the high school. We have a 10-foot trail heading up. So
Nice.
We're to the new school. So we're just beginning that footprint.
Mm-hmm.
What an opportunity. And we're typically running those through the back of a neighborhood or up one of the right-of-ways of the city streets. But going up, maybe talk about some of the rural trail
Sure.
systems that you're in charge of.
Yeah, well, and like you were saying, design elements are important here.
Yeah.
So a 10-foot concrete trail is not a sidewalk. It's wide enough that you can have multiple users. So you can have a family out there with a baby carriage and spandex warriors going 30 miles an hour. And they're not going to run into each other because it's a very wide, well-manicured trail.
Right.
We think about accesses. So the number of accesses. So when you're riding, you don't want to have to look for cars every 2 minutes, right?
Correct.
So we have limited accesses. Doesn't mean that everybody doesn't have an access, but if you have a development within a city and it has 30 homes, okay, how do we hook up one access?
Correct.
So that those 30 homes can come and funnel in? You think about Easter Lake and what we did down there. We have a 4.1 mile trail around Easter Lake, and it's incredibly popular. I think we have 7 community accesses. And that's it. So people can get on the trail and they don't have to worry about vehicle traffic all the time. So that's really important. We tend toward concrete. We have maintenance programs where we take care of them. They're well shouldered. They become linear parks. So we have a lot of habitat restoration where we do prairies, wetlands, forest plantings, or whatever it is. And not just that you have pretty flowers, although we will, native prairie flowers. They become travel corridors for birds and bees and butterflies and things like that.
Right.
That they can exist and you can see them, you can experience them in their native habitats.
Yeah. And I think that's important to point out because it's not that all of a sudden we have a road going through a field. We do have a linear trail.
Yes.
We do have flowers and trees and birds and it is an activity center, not just a trail system.
It's ugly at first, right? Whenever you create a prairie, what do we say? Sleep, creep, and leap. So when you first start a prairie, it's a bunch of weeds, right? It just looks terrible. But then you mow them down, the prairie plants are establishing themselves, and then they start to come out in greenery. And then all of a sudden it leaps and you have the full, 50 or 100 different species of prairie plants that are coming up, and you have bees and birds and butterflies all over the place. So,
exciting.
Yeah.
Well, let's with talking about the different types of nature and the things in the trails. Anything specific in the Brenton Slough area that you're looking to bring back or to add to? Are
Sure.
you going to leave it as is, or are you looking to reintroduce items down there?
That's an insightful question. So, as I had mentioned early, when the Brenton family had that property, they maintained for conservation, but they also pushed around some dirt, right,
Yeah.
to create this slough. So, different berming and things like that. Beaver Creek runs along the north side of it. Beaver Creek is a historic glacial melt stream. So it's very long and very well established. It's different than most of the metro streams. Most of the metro streams, not the Raccoon and the Des Moines River, but most of the metro streams were created by drainage, not because the glaciers were melting and created it. So Beaver Creek has really special and important characteristics around it.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing stream bank remediation, maybe looking at altering hydrology as far as making sure that we maintain water levels for whatever ecological conditions.
Okay.
You know, we have nesting sandhill cranes. We want to keep those.
Yep.
And some of the turtles and amphibians and things that we have. We're going to be looking at travel patterns. So if we do have to do road improvements and things like that, how do you do wildlife passage
Right.
as far as either bridges or tunnels or things like that?
Yep.
So all of those things for us as the conservation board are paramount.
Yeah.
So we do facilitate the outdoor recreation, but we're going to make sure that we do so in a respectful way of the wildlife and what's out there.
Great. Anything else as we kind of slow down here and wrap up?
Sure.
Anything else you want to touch on?
You know, one of the things that's going to be fun about Brenton, I had mentioned some of the things living out there, but it's also, as a glacial stream, it has all these geologic features.
Right.
So when you go north, as you know, everything's flat because it used to be the old Des Moines lobe of the glaciation. But as you hit this area and going south, it's hilly and different. So there are eskers and moraines and things like that that are within Brenton Slough that you're not going to have in other parts of the county or in the region, actually. So, and we really appreciate, Granger has really been a leader in helping us to think through some of these processes. How do you get out to Jester Park? How do you connect across 41 down to Brenton and eventually to Grimes? So I do appreciate the efforts.
Yeah, we're working diligently as we started the podcast. Before we started, I mentioned one of the difficulties when you're a public agency, and whether that's local, county, state, oftentimes the projects arrive before the money arrives.
Yeah.
And it's the way economic development works, that the tax base and the tax payments come after development. So we're rapidly engaging our partners. How do we, when I arrived in Granger in 2021, one of my goals and incentives for coming, how do you strategically plan? How do you work with the community, communicate with the community? What do you want? What do you want to see here? Unfortunately, we are going to see growth. Again, we don't own the land. The pressures in economic development tend to make that property move. What we're excited about is we feel pretty good about the planning. We don't think that we're going to expand too rapidly because we do have farmers that plan to keep farming. They are annexing their ground. They do want to be a part of the community, but they're not looking to sell for development. So the exciting thing is, how do we do this correctly?
Yes.
And how do you engage these conversations, utilize this podcast and others to get information out? And how do we partner with Polk County Conservation? How are we partnering with the communities around us, with Grimes and Johnston? And what's the trail system look like? And then for us in the community, when you look internally, that trail system and the Brenton Slough and Jester Park is just a part of what's the makeup of the community look like. And what two wonderful assets when you look at a community with a school system that's growing and a business district that's growing. We have two assets, one on our south and one on our northeast, that are under the management of the county and Polk County Conservation. And what a great benefit for us. We just need to figure out, how do we get there?
Sure. How
do we partner with the agencies, and how do we get the trail system there so that we can take advantage of that? And it increases it's exciting things for the community. I can envision, in the future, there is some connectivity. will be a big stretch to get a bridge up and over Highway 141, but I do want the listeners to know when that type of project occurs, it's not just Granger at the table.
Right.
It's the county, it's other communities, it's Department of Transportation, and are there federal dollars in there to provide safe passage? So it's not the community of Granger saying let's go build a bridge and at our full expense. It's a regional project. A lot of those I think quite a few of those are being built.
Yes.
Not quite a few, but there's several being built in the area.
And we partner all the time.
Yeah.
We just did a Raccoon River access with West Des Moines. We've partnered with Ankeny. We partner with cities. And you're right. This is a larger effort. This is a regional effort. Yeah. So Granger's at the table. Yep. And Granger, as in a leadership position, will have responsibilities, but those are not solely on Granger.
Right.
And going over 141, it's just a big erector set, right?
Yeah.
But back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I often travel down Hickman and I see that bridge sitting there. They're getting ready to put over I-35 and thinking, well, God, if they can get over I-35, someday we can go over.
We can get over 141.
Highway 141.
Yeah, just a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yes. Well, I appreciate it, Rich.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, thanks for joining. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Granger Podcast. Make sure to follow us on social media for updates on the next show, and we'll see you on the next episode. The Granger Podcast, empowering success and fueling growth.